Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Pauls, or I believe good evening for you, where you are, right?
Yes.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I didn't catch that, sorry.
Could you please tell the jury who you are?
My name is Gerard. I am a professor of genetics, human genetics, specialized in bone disease. And I'm currently working at several universities in Indonesia. Before that, I have worked in universities in the Netherlands and in Michigan, United States.
And I want to go into a little more detail about those positions, but first, can you tell the jury if you have had any health issues in the past year that might affect your testimony?
I am currently in hospital. My voice is finally working again, so that's good. I had a minor stroke, and after that I had in the intensive care, I got infected with antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So I spent 3 months in the intensive care unit, lost 27 pounds of my body weight, and I'm recovering now, and my brain is okay, no problems with talking or thinking or reasoning, and I'm soon going to leave the hospital to go home. But this is I'm living in my laptop now, I have a private room in the hospital from where I'm talking now.
And what hospital is that? Where are you located?
I'm located in the Netherlands.
Is that where you are from originally?
Yes, I am originally from the Netherlands.
Okay, thank you, doctor. And let's talk a little bit about your experience. What is your education?
I have a master's degree in biochemistry and a PhD in genetics. So it's quite an interesting combination, because most geneticists have a medical background or biology background, and they don't know anything about the proteins that are involved in disease.
And where did you receive those degrees from?
The degrees, my biochemistry degree was a master's from the University of Utrecht, and my PhD was from the VU University in Amsterdam, the Netherlands.
And after you received those degrees, where did you go on to work?
Degrees? I had a master's degree in biochemistry.
Well, and I'm sorry, after you received those degrees, where did you go on to work?
Oh, I'm sorry. I worked in Amsterdam, in the university, the VU University Hospital. And after that I went to Detroit, Michigan, where I was an associate professor at Wayne State University, teaching medical students in the field of genetics.
Do you have any board certifications?
Certification, I have accreditation as a clinical molecular geneticist, which means that my professional task is to make diagnoses of inherited diseases, genetic diseases, based on clinical symptoms and on DNA and protein analysis, laboratory analysis.
Have you ever started any diagnostic laboratories?
I've started a genetic diagnostic laboratory in Amsterdam in 1989, and I have been director of that laboratory for some 27 years, I think. And then we started with 2 people in the lab. We now have more than 200 in the same laboratory. Yeah, more space, of course.
And what kind of work do you do at that laboratory and the people that you supervise?
We do diagnostic testing. Most of the work is DNA testing based on DNA sequence analysis, and part of the work is protein analysis, because in genetics we have to do with our chromosomes that consist of DNA. The DNA contains the code for proteins, and the proteins are what make our body. So if there is an error in the DNA, it will be copied into the RNA, into the protein, and there it will have an effect on the body.
So do you have any medical doctors in your lab, or are you mostly research scientists?
In the lab we don't have medical doctors. We have in the group several medical doctors who are geneticists. They have been trained specifically in working with genetic diseases.
Are you a part of any multidisciplinary centers on rare bone diseases?
Yes.
Can you tell us what those are?
Well, we have several rare bone diseases that are genetically have genetic causes. There's a group of diseases which is called osteogenesis imperfecta, which has a very wide spectrum of severity. So the mild forms, we see more than average fractures in babies, for example, and those people have usually a normal body height, normal stature. Their bones under X-ray examination look quite normal. Sometimes they have thin bones, fragile bones, but most of the time they have what we call brittle bones, which is different from fragile because they are not thin. You can compare it with a blackboard crayon.
Well, let me stop you for just a moment, doctor. We still need to go through all of your credentials so that I can seek to admit you as an expert. So what is the name of the Center for Rare Bone, or what is the organization for rare bone diseases that you are a part of?
It is the Amsterdam Bone Center, ABC. And part of that is the Amsterdam Genome Diagnostic Laboratory.
And what does the Genome Diagnostic Laboratory do?
They do genetic testing, or DNA testing of individuals, patients who are suspected to have an inherited disease. We also do prenatal testing in cases of familial diseases, and we do, for example, NIPT, non-invasive prenatal testing.
Have you been involved in writing any guidelines or standards for interpretation of these results?
Guidelines. We have the European guidelines for interpretation of DNA results. The organization is called EMQN. I
And
forgot what it means exactly, but it's comparable to the American College of Medical Genetics.
And have you ever authored any peer-reviewed articles in journals on these subjects?
Yes, in my CV you can see that I have more than 370 peer-reviewed publications that have been cited more than 22,000 times by other peer-reviewed journals.
And do these papers include discoveries of new causative genes for osteogenesis imperfecta?
Yes, we found several new genes that are involved in osteogenesis imperfecta.
And are you a member of any other medical advisory boards or groups?
I'm a member of the medical advisory board for the patient organization of osteogenesis imperfecta, and I'm an honorary member of the patient organization for Marfan syndrome, which is another connective tissue disorder.
And have you and your team been involved in diagnostic testing of individual patients?
Have I been involved in, and yes, I have been involved in diagnosis of individual patients, yes.
Okay.
That was the question.
And at this time, I would like to tender Dr. Gerard Pauls as an expert in the field of genetics and bone disorders.
Ms. Fox, any objection?
Could I please voir dire?
Yes, you can.
Dr. Pauls, you are not a medical doctor,
No, I teach medical doctors.
but you're not a medical doctor yourself.
No, I'm not. It's like law professors, they are not lawyers. You trust them still.
You're not certified to practice medicine in the field of genetics.
No.
You're not
But I
licensed
have the
to...
professional responsibility to make clinical and medical diagnosis for these cases. So that's
You're not
a different from the
licensed to
United States, I
treat...
think.
My question is, you're not licensed to treat patients as a physician,
No, no.
and you don't have patients personally yourself where you've diagnosed. As far as they're not your patients, you're part of a team that makes a diagnosis.
I'm part of a team. I don't have my own patients, no.
So who else is on the team that makes the diagnosis?
Well, I'm the only one that makes the diagnosis based on the DNA interpretation of the DNA and protein analyses. And the team also has an endocrinologist, an orthopedic surgeon, and a radiologist.
So my question goes back to, you have a PhD, not an MD. So
Yes.
a PhD can't make a diagnosis. Who do you rely on that is the MD that makes a medical diagnosis?
It's the system I told you is a little bit different from the United States. I am the one who's responsible for the medical diagnosis based on the laboratory analyses.
So it's a
In
difference
Europe,
in countries.
the clinical laboratory does not require a medical degree.
Okay, that
Because
explains my
doctors don't know
question.
enough about the biochemistry and they don't know enough about genetics. Very
I
simple.
appreciate your response. That answers my question, because in America, a PhD cannot make a medical diagnosis. So in
Yes.
your country, they can.
Yes, but you can because we have a special accreditation board for this profession.
Your Honor, that would be my one ear in this case.
Mr. Hood, do you have any questions of this witness? Any objection, Ms. Fox?
No.
Mr. Hood? Then this witness will be admitted as an expert in the field of genetics and bone disorder. Was that the other?
Yes, Your Honor.
He'll be admitted per your request, Ms. Bernard.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Dr. Pauls, when did you first have occasion to review the case of Jamison Timms here in Gordon County, Georgia, United States?
That was in 2022.
And what did you review in the course of considering Jameson Tim's case?
I reviewed hospital records and X-ray imaging, and I think there was also some reports from the Child Protection Service. I'm not sure about that. If you want, I can check it in my report. There's a list of things that I reviewed.
If you want to double check, that's fine. This was 3 years ago, and you've had a lot going on since then.
Let me check that. It's yeah, there were also some photographs of Jameson, but the I'm sorry, I don't have a list of all the reports that I reviewed in the report. Sorry, you usually do that.
But you did review the medical records for Jameson
Yes.
Tim's.
Yeah, and the pregnancy records also.
And so you reviewed some health materials for Jameson's mother, Carrie Tim's.
Yes.
Why would that be important in determining what was going on with Jameson Tim's?
Well, we see that some medicines that are taken by the mother will pass the placenta and will harm the baby. Most of these medicines have been approved for use also during pregnancy because it's not known exactly what they do. They don't cause malformations. But I noticed and I found that several medicines taken by Jameson's mother during the pregnancy do have an effect on a substance that we call serotonin. Now, serotonin is mainly known in the medical field as a neurotransmitter in our brain, but that is only a very tiny portion of the total amount of serotonin in our body. The majority of serotonin in our body is a hormone which directs two very important processes. One is bone formation, the other one is blood clotting. So both of which are very important in a case like Jameson's, where there were unexplained fractures and where there were also unexplained blue discolorations under the skin.
So do I understand you that serotonin has an effect on bone growth and development?
Also on bone remodeling. It is, I have listed several scientific publications from peer-reviewed journals at the end of
Wait just a minute, sir, hold on a minute.
Your Honor, I object to any scientific publications. We were not allowed to do that. I would object.
And just Dr. Pauls, you can refer to your own work and observations, but under direct examination, we can't talk about any additional literature. So just please refer to your own work.
Well, my own work showed that when we checked for fractures in babies below the age of 1 year, we found in 1 million babies 10 times more fractures in the exposed group compared to the non-exposed group. And exposed means the babies who have been exposed to serotonin inhibitors, such as the very commonly used ondansetron, which is an anti-nausea medication that's used in the United States. In the United States, it's allowed to use that during pregnancy. In Europe, it's not. But we found a very high number of fractures in babies that have been exposed. Not in all babies that have been exposed, of course, but still, my conclusion is that the inhibition of serotonin has a negative effect on the bone quality of newborn babies.
So taking a common anti-nausea drug during pregnancy could have a negative effect on bone density and strength for the infant?
Yes, that's correct.
And are there other medications that can cause these impacts with serotonin?
There was one other medication that the mother used. I think it's called metoclopramide. Let me check. Metoprolol.
It's I'm not going to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, metoprolol causes a reduction of serotonin and its precursor tryptophan. It says in my report also. And, the baby does not make its own serotonin yet. The enzymes that it needs to make its own serotonin are only expressed after the second year of life. So at first the baby depends on the mother and the mother milk for its supply of serotonin.
And that medication was metoprolol, which is
Metoprolol.
a blood pressure, it's taken to reduce blood pressure, right?
Yes, and it has an effect on the serotonin receptors.
And does this effect on serotonin receptors also impact collagen production?
Not directly, but indirectly it's because the serotonin is essential in the differentiation of stem cells in the bone to osteoblasts and osteocytes. So that's the synthesis part of bone.
And what is an osteoblast, doctor? If you could explain that term to us, please.
So you explain more?
What is an osteoblast?
An osteoblast is a bone cell that produces bone and produces collagen. So it deposits collagen fibers in the bone, and the collagen fibers are essential for strength and elasticity of the bone. It's the same as the steel fibers and the steel construction in a building. I live on the 21st floor in Jakarta in an apartment, and we have on the average 2 earthquakes per week, and we feel the building move, but it never breaks because it has these fibers. And the same is true for our bones. Normally they do not break if the collagen fibers are creating elasticity and strength for the bone. And the osteoblasts produce collagen, and the amount of collagen that goes into the bone is enormous. So if a baby has not enough protein, or prenatally low birth weight, early birth, it's not, the collagen is not sufficient. You need enormous amounts of amino acids to produce sufficient collagen.
Are you able to determine how much collagen is present in a bone by looking at an X-ray?
You cannot see the collagen in an X-ray image.
Are there any tests that you can do to find out the amount of collagen present in a bone?
Well, of course, you can do a bone biopsy, and you can see it under the microscope. There is a way to look at bone mineral density, which is not always, but it is sometimes reduced in bone disease, and but you cannot see that on regular X-ray imaging. You need what we call a DEXA scan, DEXA. That's for dual energy X-ray absorptiometry.
Can you do a DEXA scan on a child under the age of 1 year?
It's possible. It's difficult to get a relevant control group because we are in the hospital reluctant to expose babies to radiation. But there are publications, scientific publications with control groups, DEXA scan under the under the age of 1 year.
Are there any other tests that can determine bone strength and density?
There are several tests that can be done on the blood, like breakdown products of collagen in the blood. We call it cross labs. That's also a part of what we see in the blood. In the case, that's part of collagen molecules, and there are also other proteins that can be tested in the blood, like osteomectin, and sometimes alkaline phosphatase is disturbed, but PTH can be disturbed. That is parathyroid hormone. If that is high at birth, we get what we call a temporary form of osteogenesis imperfecta. And we don't have any laboratory test of Jameson tins from shortly after birth, so we don't know if he had vitamin D deficiency or if he had PTH too high. And the other relevant bone markers have never been tested. Only calcium has been tested, I think.
And what other bodily structure, oh, please go ahead.
I couldn't hear you, sorry, I saw your mouth move, but...
What other bodily structures are impacted by collagen development besides bones?
The collagens keep our body together, so collagen type 1 is very important in bone, but also in our skin, no, skin is less, but in blood vessels. So that's why patients with bone disease, like osteogenesis imperfecta, often have easy bruising.
And what kind of genetic testing should be done to determine if any of these conditions are present?
Yes, but very often the laboratories do not offer the right panel of genes for osteogenesis imperfecta. I checked all the commercial laboratories that offer DNA testing for genetic diseases in the United States, and none of them offers a comprehensive test of osteogenesis imperfecta. Not what I call comprehensive, because there are so many recessive genes, and some of them we recently discovered, and most laboratories, actually none of the laboratories have included the more recently discovered genes, and we don't know how frequent mutations in those genes are because they've never been tested yet.
Did you see in Jameson Tim's medical records any, strike that. What are the COL1A1 and COL1A2 genes?
Those are the genes that have the code for collagen type 1, alpha 1 and alpha 2. And we have triple helix molecules that are formed by 2 alpha 1 chains and 1 alpha 2 chain. So that's, and those are very long molecules, and they form fibers that form the basis for the strength of bone. So the minerals are deposited on top of the collagen fibers.
And so these genes are responsible for the way that collagen develops and then the way that minerals develop over the collagen?
Not only those, because the COL1A1 and COL1A2 genes are encoding the collagen molecules, but there are some 30 or 40 different enzymes and chaperone molecules that are also proteins, also encoded by genes, that are essential in modifying the collagen, putting the triple helix together, make chemical changes to the collagens, and put the fibers together. So that's a whole series of genes that, if there are mutations in those genes, that can also cause bone disease.
How many possible mutations are there in these genes?
Or the theoretically possible number of mutations is, let me see, now it's probably around 50,000 to 100,000 different ones, but we don't see all of those possible mutations. The mutations we found so far that cause osteogenesis imperfecta, it's more in the order of several thousands, I think. Well, I am actually curator of the international databases in this field. And I think the last time I counted, there were some between 3,000 and 4,000 different mutations that are causative in the disease.
To make sure I understand you correctly, you're saying that there are 3,000 to 4,000 genetic mutations or variants that could be, that are related to forms of osteogenesis imperfecta?
Yeah, that's why the disease is so variable. So
And
there are mutations that have the same effect, of course, but also many have different effects. And so, for example, mutations in collagen, if they cause lack of collagen, so they block the gene expression, so there's no protein, or 50% of the protein only, that will have a relatively mild effect. Some changes in the composition may have a more severe effect.
so does this mean that there is a very wide variety of severity of osteogenesis imperfecta, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, it's very wide range of severities. The mild cases, they may have the first fracture in the first year of life, and then the second fracture when they're 5 or 6 years old. Some of them have more severe form of the disease and have more fractures every year. And the most severe cases, they die at birth. It's perinatally lethal, they call it. And that's because the skull is not completely formed, so the brain is not protected to survive the pressure during birth.
So have you discovered anything about recessive and X-linked genes related to osteogenesis imperfecta?
Yes.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, we found one gene, if you called P.
Sorry, we've got a little bit of a connection issue, Dr. Pauls.
I think it froze.
I think he is frozen.
Do you have a cell phone number for him or a contact number?
I can call him.
I think you might have to. The only way you've ever been able to do this is to get it to log off and log back on, I think. Is that right? That's really, when they freeze like that. I think we just lost it, you know, okay. I think he's logging back on. Okay, sir, can you hear us now?
I can hear you now, yes. Can
Okay,
you hear?
you froze momentarily, so I'm gonna ask Ms. Bernard to re-ask her question, and then we'll start again. Ms.
Yes.
Bernard.
Thank you, Dr. Pauls. You were explaining to us the relevance of recessive and X-linked osteogenesis imperfecta genes.
Oh, yes. Well, it's highly relevant, especially in cases of suspected child abuse, because if there is a child that has a bone disease and the parents don't have a bone disease, it's either a recessive case, so the child has to inherit two DNA variants or mutations from each parent, so both chromosomes contain a defect gene for that specific gene, or it's a new mutation in one of the dominant genes. The dominant genes are mainly COL1 alpha 1 and COL1 A2, and there are two other dominant genes that cause osteogenesis imperfecta. And in my experience of 1,600 cases that the laboratory has diagnosed, in cases of a new patient in a family without any family history, in 40% of those cases, it is a new mutation in the baby. And the other 60% are what we call recessive.
So does that mean that these conditions can be present in a child even if they are not present in either of the parents?
That's right, yeah, there's no family history at all, and still the child has the disease. That's true for many recessive diseases.
And does everyone who has osteogenesis imperfecta, do they necessarily have a pathogenic variant of one of these genes?
Well, I suspect they have a pathogenic variant or two variants in recessive genes, but in more than 10% of the clinically diagnosed osteogenesis imperfecta cases, we do not find a mutation in all the known genes. So simply we do not know all the genes yet.
So it sounds like there has been a lot of research done, but there is a lot of research left to do to learn about this. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. We still need research in the field of osteogenesis imperfecta and other bone diseases, yes.
But given what you know as a result of your work in the laboratory and what you have reviewed about Jameson Tim's case, have you come to any conclusions about what may be involved in the fractures of his ribs?
Yeah. see when there are unexplained fractures in a baby that's not moving yet, in maybe under 1 year of age, that's the primary diagnosis is then this must be a bone disease. And as differential diagnosis, I think we also look at the possibility of child abuse, of course, because it needs to be prevented. But it's my impression that many doctors do not believe that the medical causes of fractures can be reported because they are rare. And that's just evidence of ignorance of the medical doctors in the field of statistics, because if you have if you look at the prior probability of any baby to have a bone disease that causes fractures, that's very rare, maybe 1 in 10,000 or 15,000. However, if you look at a baby that has unexplained fractures, so there are no symptoms of the fractures, there are no cause of the fractures, and in that case it is a very high probability, what we call a posterior probability, after that we know that there were unexplained fractures, that probability is very high. And I think that there is a publication from well, I don't know exactly when, but it has been studied in
Hold up just a minute, sir.
I object to any publications. We were not allowed to do that. I would ask for the same treatment for the state.
And to just
okay.
make sure you're only referring to your own work at this stage. The state will no doubt have some questions that will require references to outside material.
You can just restate your question, Ms. Bernard.
Well, so we're talking about your observations and analysis of Jamison Tim's case and what you have observed about possible causes for the rib fractures that were present on his skeletal survey.
Well, I think that in the case of Jameson, it's possible that there is a genetic background. We cannot exclude that yet. And it's also likely, it is likely that the use of specific medication by the mother during the pregnancy or just prior to the pregnancy has caused a low bone quality in Jameson. So this may have led to fractures in the ribs during birth.
And are there,
Can't hear you.
if Jamison's condition was the result of inflicted injury, what would you expect to see in his medical records?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. If it was suspected to be?
Yes, because you mentioned, of course, that child abuse is always a possibility. Are there any ways that you would look at a fracture, for example, and determine whether it was likely inflicted by someone else or the result of one of these conditions that you mentioned?
That's very difficult to determine. In this case, there is no evidence whatsoever of abuse. It's just the presence of fractures that causes the doctor to think there must have been abuse. And I'm always surprised that in cases like this, I am involved in more than 100 cases at the moment, or in the past, and that none of these parents have an explanation for the fractures. And if someone abuses a baby and causes a fracture, I expect them to think of an excuse for the fracture, like having dropped the baby or something. They never have these stories. They are surprised that something is wrong with the baby, they take it to the ER, and that's a high risk now because then the risk of taking the baby away from them is very high. I think that's terrible.
Are there any other factors that you would expect to see with an inflicted fracture, such as damage?
I'm going to object to the form of the question. He's a geneticist. He's not a child abuse specialist. If he stays in genetics, I'm fine, but she's asking for other things other than what a geneticist is qualified.
Well, let me hear the rest of her question. I understand your objection. What's your question?
Well, and I did ask to have him qualified in bone disorders as well. So if, I wanted to ask, would there be any other indications of inflicted injury that you would see with a fracture if it was abuse or inflicted injury?
And Ms. Fox, your objection?
Same objection. He is not a child abuse specialist. He's a geneticist, so he's qualified to talk about bone disease. He's qualified to talk about genes and genomes. He's not qualified to testify as to what you would expect to find in general abuse.
I'll let you rephrase your question as it applies to the field he was qualified as an expert in, Ms. Bernard.
Certainly, Your Honor. So, Dr. Pauls, are there any other signs throughout the body of bone disease or metabolic bone disorders?
Yes, there are, but if we look at osteogenesis imperfecta, we often see blue sclerae, so the eye white is a bit bluish or gray because of the lack of collagen, but that's only in some 30 to 35% of the cases, so absence does not exclude the disease. And the same is true for dentinogenesis imperfecta, the bad teeth. However, that's not useful in cases of babies who have no teeth yet. And moreover, that's also not present in most of the cases. We did publish from our group recently several papers about extraskeletal problems in patients with osteogenesis imperfecta, and that includes internal bleeding, easy bruising, also intracranial bleeding sometimes, and that's more often found in children with osteogenesis imperfecta than in the control group. Also pulmonary problems sometimes, but none of these are present in all OI patients. So you cannot use those symptoms the absence does not exclude the disease. That's the problem.
And was this part of the subject of your paper from 2021, Genetics of Osteogenesis Imperfecta and Suspected Child Abuse?
That is part of my paper, yes.
Was that one of the issues that you discussed in the paper?
Yes.
And were there any other conclusions that you drew about the genetics of osteogenesis imperfecta and suspected child abuse in your work?
Yes, I mentioned in that publication also that what I mentioned before during this session already, that the doctors do not understand the difference between the prior probability and the posterior probability. They think these diseases are rare, therefore it's not likely to find them, and that's not true. And I get the impression that the child abuse pediatricians, which is a specialism that only exists in the United States and in Canada, that these specialists are focused so much on finding evidence of abuse that they forget about the rest. They do not look at all at medical causes except for the reason of excluding them.
And do you, from your review of Jameson's medical records and test results, do you believe that adequate testing was done to exclude any possibility of brittle bones or a bone disease?
No, that has not been tested. Originally, only the dominant genes have been tested, and that's actually, well, I would call it stupid, because the parents don't have the disease, so the child has either recessive or a new mutation. So if you test only the dominant genes, you don't want to find something. And also the other laboratory tests, I don't see any results of tests that are specific for bone disease.
And were you able to determine anything about the genetic variant on the SP7 gene in Jameson-Timms?
I've seen that, yes. It's called an unclassified variant, or variant of unknown significance. That label does not exclude a pathogenic effect of the variant. It's just saying we don't know. And at the moment, I don't know either, because I was trying to look at the effect of this variant on the protein, but the relevant software is out of order. I have software that I use for this purpose, and it's not working, and I don't know when it will work.
Okay. How about the variant on COL1A2 that was present in Jameson?
Yeah, it's an intronic mutation, or intronic variant. It can only have an effect on the disease if it has an effect on RNA splicing. And I'm not sure in this case whether it will cause a defect in RNA splicing. RNA is the stage in between the code of the gene. The gene is expressed and is copied into RNA molecules. The RNA molecules are changed into what we call the messenger RNA, and that produces the protein, because it contains the protein code. And changes at that level often have a severe effect on the protein.
Thank you. And oh, please go ahead.
And so you also asked about the variant in the SP7. That's a change in one amino acid of proline amino acid into serine. Well, that's a big difference. Proline is actually not an amino acid, it's an amino acid. It's a biochemical difference that doctors don't know about, but proline can have 180 degree angle in the protein, or 60 degrees, nothing in between. And that makes it a building block of the protein that's very important in the tertiary structure of the protein. The serine has a free OH group, a free chemical group that makes it likely to be changed by attachment of a sugar molecule, which is larger than amino acids, so it will have a stronger effect relatively than just a change of amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of the proteins. And we have 20 different amino acids in our body, and those are the building blocks.
Would the fact that Jameson had these two variants of uncertain significance, does that have any relevance, that he had two separate irregular results?
It's possible that we often see, no, let me start again, I'm sorry. Nowadays we more often do broad analysis of many genes at the same time, called whole exome sequencing or whole genome sequencing. And then we more often see nowadays that a disease like osteogenesis imperfecta can also be caused by what we call a polygenic or a multigenic effect. So some genes have normally a recessive effect, but if you have more than one variant in one of the recessive genes, those together will have a total effect on the collagen and also a total effect on the disease. And in some genes that are known as recessive, the cases that we originally studied were usually severe cases, because then there's no doubt about the clinical diagnosis. That led to the misconception that recessive genes cause severe osteogenesis imperfecta. It's not true. Nowadays, we see also mild forms of osteogenesis imperfecta caused by recessive mutations in those genes, or we see mild osteogenesis imperfecta in the parents who have a severely affected child, and the parents only have one mutation each. So that's a dominant, pseudo-dominant effect, now what you call it, an intermediate dominant effect of a recessive gene that happens, and more often than we thought, actually.
And Dr. Pauls, you said you've been involved in a number of these cases, right? That you have been involved in quite a few cases of these unexplained fractures, is that right?
Yes.
And are you being paid to offer a certain opinion in these cases?
No, I'm not.
Have you offered your services pro bono to the TIMS?
Yes. Sometimes I get paid for the hours that I spend in court and in making the reports, but that's usually when there is the Bureau of the Public Defender is involved, and they have a budget where they can pay me for my efforts, for my cost of travel sometimes if I have to come to the court sessions, but I'm not paying to give a verdict of the diagnosis of non-abuse. No, is that what you mean?
You're not looking to make excuses for anyone or conceal any facts here.
I object to the leading. I mean, I let her ask a question and she says it 3 times and now she's outright leading.
I'll sustain that objection.
Well, I think at this point I will pass the witness. Thank you for your time, Dr. Pauls, and the state and defense counsel will have a few more questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard.
Dr. Pauls, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. I want to talk specifically about Jameson's genes. Okay?
The genes, yes?
Yes. I want to talk first about the test that he had done that showed on Col 1A1 there is no abnormality. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Because there is no abnormality on Col 1A1, that is not the cause of anything that contributed to his broken bones, correct?
That's correct, yeah, but irrelevant.
Okay. I want to break down your analysis of Col 1A2. On Col 1A2, there are introns, and on number 9, there is a variant, correct?
Yes.
It's a long sequence. I could read it. It's a C period 432 plus 6T, and then there is a larger than C sign, which means that at the very end of that sequence, there is an interchange between a T and a C, correct?
Yes.
So that would be the abnormality on col 1A2, genetically, correct?
That's correct, yes.
That switch in your field is called a substitution.
It's a substitution, yes.
Okay. And the effect of that, it is considered a splice donor site, correct?
Yes.
And on the written report, it says, effect unknown, but not very likely to alter mRNA splicing. Do you agree with that statement?
I agree, yes.
And then you said that you've also looked at it, and you also do not find that it would affect the mRNA splicing.
That's correct, yes.
So you cannot say today that that defect is the cause of the broken bones, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So we have spent quite a bit of time in this case on col 1A2, and the result is genetically, we don't know.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. I've got some additional questions about Jameson's genes. You were asked
I don't get the relevance
specifically,
of the previous questions.
yes, you were asked specifically about SP7. That was
Yeah.
also a variant in Jameson's genes. That
Yes.
was labeled as a variant of unknown significance as well, correct?
Yes, which means we don't know.
Which means we don't know. But in that case, he only had one recessive gene. In order to be an issue, you need two, correct?
No.
Why would you say it differently?
One mutation in one of the more severe recessive genes can already have a mild effect. But if you have more families that have been studied, we often see that.
Okay, but SP7 is not a receptor site that people look for osteogenesis imperfecta, is it?
It's one of the genes that should be analyzed if you want to know if a patient has osteogenesis imperfecta.
So you would need to analyze it further.
We need to analyze all the 79 genes that I have in my list of OI-related genes, yes.
Okay.
But none of the laboratories will test that.
So genetically, both were listed in the report as variants of unknown significance.
Yes,
The classifications could have been pathogenic, which means could cause the disease. Likely pathogenic, which means might.
yes,
Variable of unknown significance.
yes,
Likely benign, which means probably not going to be ever pathogenic. And then
Yes.
benign. Those are the different classifications.
yes.
So we're smack dab in the middle on both. So basically, if we take everything you said for the last hour and a half, genetically, you can't answer this case for the jury.
We cannot exclude it either.
Okay, fair enough.
We're trying to go towards the idea of excluding osteogenesis imperfecta, and that's not possible.
Okay,
Because
You
not
have
all the genes
mentioned-
can be studied.
I apologize. You have mentioned that osteogenesis imperfecta is very rare. Is it a fair statement that in the United States, only 25,000 to 50,000 people have osteogenesis imperfecta?
The frequency, the incidence is 1 in 15,000. So I don't know what the number of patients is then in the United States with 330 million inhabitants, but you can do the calculus.
Okay. Also, as we just talked, a diagnosis of osteogenesis imperfecta would not exclude a non-accidental injury.
That's true, yes.
Okay. Did you review the July 29th, 24 panel gene testing that was ordered and received by Dr. Kathy Stevens?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I've seen so many.
You didn't like the
reports.
fact that the 3-gene panel was done by CHOA. Did you even know there was a 24-panel gene testing done in this case?
I don't think I've seen that.
Okay. Were you given the September 18th, 2024 study that was ordered by Dr. Krishnamurthy? That was a 67 gene panel gene testing. Were you given that one?
I haven't seen that one, no. I was already in hospital then.
Okay. And I apologize for that you were in hospital then. Did you see the factor 9 testing that was done at CHOA that came in at 85? That was normal.
I'm not sure I've seen that.
Okay. Because the range would be anything over 21 is normal, correct?
Yes?
In your article that was referred to earlier, Genetics of Osteogenesis Imperfecta and Suspected Child Abuse, you state that you always consult an experienced radiologist regarding the interpretation of the radiographs. Did you do that in this case?
Yes, I showed the radiographs to the
Did they make a
radiologist in my
report?
team.
Hold on a second. Let me let you finish your answer, and then Ms. Fox, you ask the next question. So finish your answer, sir.
Yes, I showed these radiographs to the radiologist in my team, and we concluded that the quality of the radiology is exceptionally low. I work nowadays in Indonesia, which is considered not used to this bad quality of X-ray imaging.
Okay. Did he write a written report?
No.
Which films did you show him?
I showed him the DICOM files that I received. There are X-ray images of hands and feet, and of the limbs, which are quite normal, and then some not very good quality, let's say it, of the thorax of November and 2022, I think, just when Jensen was like 6 weeks old, and then of January.
Okay.
After that.
And he noted that the limbs had grown normally.
I haven't looked at that.
Okay, I thought that's what you had just said. I'm sorry.
It's possible, I don't know.
Okay.
But you expect normal growth of limbs also in cases of osteogenesis imperfecta.
In your
Up to
article,
mild cases.
in your article I just referred to, you acknowledge that people could use osteogenesis imperfecta as an excuse to get away with child abuse.
That's not my statement, that was the statement of a number of radiologists in a paper that I'm referring to there.
You noted that a non-radiologic issue would be something that you would refer to because you can't always answer the question just by the x-rays.
That's the same for abuse. It's not a clinical or medical diagnosis. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in court here.
So isn't it important to consider that Jameson had no new bruises when he was in foster care?
Just give it a minute. He was able to self-correct a few months ago. Let's see if I don't do it again. Doctor, can you hear us again?
Yes, Yes, I can hear and see you again, yes.
Yes, we lost you again for a moment. Ms. Fox, if you'll repeat your last question, please.
Based on that, isn't it an important factor to consider that Jameson had no new bruises when he was in foster care?
Actually, I expect no further bruising and no further fractures, because it must have been an effect of the medication that he was exposed to in the womb.
Do you
That
think
effect
it's
will have worn off after a few months.
Do you think it's important to consider that he didn't have any additional fractures when he was no longer living in the Tim's home?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I expect that.
Do you agree that rib fractures rarely occur in osteogenesis imperfecta persons who are under the age of 12 months?
No, I don't. Very often they are undiagnosed until an X-ray imaging is done for another purpose. And then we very often see non-symptomatic rib fractures. And we don't know how often this occurs in the general population because we don't have skeletal surveys of the general baby population.
You would agree that based on the information that you were given, there is no family history of osteogenesis imperfecta on either side?
That's to be expected. Yes, I was given that information, yes. But if it's not the collagen genes, you don't expect a family history because then you expect a recessive inheritance. And as we all know, then there is no family history, usually.
Did you get the factor IX assay results from January 14th that were 85, which was within the normal range?
Yes, but that's irrelevant after so much time.
Did you also get the January 15th platelet count that showed 285, which was in the normal range?
Yes.
Did you get the APTT count of 32.7 on January 13th, which was in the accepted medical range?
Except the normal range, yes.
Did you receive the DEXA scan that showed that the bone density of Jameson is normal?
I don't recall that. I don't think I mentioned it in my report.
Okay. That's an important factor, that his bone density, when he was old enough to have the DEXA scan, is normal.
That's not relevant. If it was lower after birth due to the exposure to the medication, the main problem in osteogenesis imperfecta and other bone diseases is in the collagen, not in the minerals.
Did you note that he had a successful outpatient circumcision that had minimal bleeding?
Sorry, what was the question?
Did you note that he had a successful outpatient circumcision with minimal bleeding?
I don't recall that, no, but it's possible, yeah.
Did you note in the medical records from Erlanger that when his blood was drawn, that it stopped bleeding within 30 seconds?
I didn't notice that, no.
Are you aware of studies that show that there is a positive correlation between rib fractures and child abuse?
I'm aware of the literature, but that is mainly based on circular reasoning. All the cases in which rib fractures are accidentally found after X-ray imaging for another purpose, then a skeletal survey is made, they diagnose rib fractures and conclude this is abuse. That's why it seems to be specific for abuse, because they always conclude abuse. And that's nonsense, that's circular reasoning. A deadly sin in science.
You only wrote one report in this case, and it's dated back from May the 5th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
At that point, Jameson was still a baby, correct?
Yes.
One of the things you thought you noted was the fact that his sutures of fissures were closing too soon, which could have been a sign of craniosynostosis, correct?
That's correct, yes. I
Would you be,
don't know how he developed, so,
yeah, would you be surprised to find out that they closed normally and he did not have that condition?
well, it's possible, yes.
You also thought he looked like he was going to have Cole Carpenter syndrome. That was actually your conclusion in the end, that that was definitely a possibility based on your review of his images.
A possibility based on a lack of information.
Yeah. Would you be surprised to know he does not have that syndrome?
Now, have the genes for that syndrome been tested?
He's been seen by 2 geneticists in America, and he has no features of that syndrome.
Okay, well,
Are you,
That's good find.
so you're wrong on both of those? It was good guessing, but wrong, correct?
sorry? What?
So you were wrong on both of those diagnoses.
And
But
Your
we're not
Honor,
diagnosis.
I would
It's not
interpose
a
an,
diagnosis, it was a suggestion.
Just a suggestion?
just one moment, Dr.
Possibility.
Paul.
Okay, wait just a minute, sir. What's your objection?
And I would object to the mischaracterization of the witness's report. His summary and conclusions specifically reported the types of medication being used, as well as there being no evidence supporting the conclusion of non-accidental injury, as well as embryonic exposure. There is no discussion of a conclusion or diagnosis that would support the state's characterization of him.
Ms. Fox?
My conclusion is that in the case of JT, the reported fractures have been caused by a combination of brittle bones and normal handling or minor trauma.
Wait a minute, I need you to read it to me. I just need what your response to her objection
It
is.
includes what I just said. The next sentence is what I said. I have a right to cross him on his written report.
Okay, so your response is it's contained in his report.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, I would overrule the objection, and sir, you can answer the question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, Ms. Fox?
I think Ms. Bernard did not like my word diagnosis. Those were conclusions, and I think the word you're using today were suggestions of what the child might have. Correct?
Yes?
They ended up being wrong.
And Your Honor, I would again
Yeah.
interpose my
It's possible.
objection. I would again interpose my objection. The state cannot cite to any part of the report that uses the phrase conclusion in response to the specific 2 medical conditions she was referring to. The conclusion was regarding the brittle bones and normal handling.
I'll sustain that objection. Go ahead with your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Are you familiar with the article Evaluating Young Children with Fractures for Child Abuse? It's a clinical report. It was authored by Haney, Sherry, DeMeglio, Perez, Rosello, Surveys, Merchant, and the Council for Child Abuse and Neglect.
And I thought you were against scientific publications.
My question is, are you familiar with that article?
Not if you mention it like that, I'm not sure. Probably.
Okay.
I'm aware of it somewhere, but there are so many publications in this field that I don't know.
Yeah, if you were here in person, I would give it to you so you could look at it and see if you've read that one. It came out this year in January of 2025. Have you
Oh, then I
been
haven't
keeping
seen
up
it.
to date with the literature?
Yeah, I have not kept up with the literature the last couple of months while I was in hospital.
Are you aware there's literature that criticizes testimonies such as yours that link prenatal medications to abuse?
Well, if it's linked to abuse, that's correct, of course, there is no link between that.
Okay.
I
But the link
say
is
that prenatal medication
Yeah.
impacts the bone quality of the babies. And I have the evidence for that, I told you that.
My question is, are you aware there's articles out there criticizing the connection?
Well, yeah, there's also articles that say that shaken baby syndrome is real, and that's total nonsense.
You don't believe in shaken baby syndrome either?
No, because it's in clear contrast with the laws of physics. What he's saying is caused by the shaking is impossible to explain with the laws of physics that we teach in high school. The doctors who still believe in that have to go back to high school.
My last question, even if Jameson had osteogenesis imperfecta or brittle bones, such as you say, he could still have been abused, correct?
Could have been abused, yes, but I do not see no sign of real hematomas. The blue spots that were shown on his skin, if you go to my report that I submitted in 2022, I think, it was showing a dark blue spot on his arm which was disappeared the next day. That is not a bruise. It's something else, I won't go into that, but it's not a bruise.
If the medical evidence showed that it was on his body on the 17th, and
Yeah, it
stayed
was gone
4
the 18th.
days.
You look at my report. On the 18th, it was gone. It was disappeared.
On the 18th, he was in the hospital. He didn't get discharged to the 20th. Did you read those reports?
I have in my report taken photos. I showed photos with the date stamps that were from the hospital. One day there was a blue spot on his arm. The next day, the same arm, has disappeared. So that is not a bruise. Very simple.
Well, my question was, do you agree that even if Jameson had brittle bone, or as you would say, osteogenesis, even though it's not connected to the genes we talked about, would you agree he could still have been abused?
Not very likely, because anyway, I would expect more severe fractures.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Mr. Hood, do you have questions of this witness?
I do, Judge. Dr. Pauls, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good afternoon or good evening, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
My name is Jason Hood, and I represent Mr. Brady Timms in this case. I've just got a few questions for you, okay?
Yeah.
We've talked a great deal, especially over the past couple of days, about a phrase that is VUS, or variant of uncertain significance. You are, of course, familiar with that phrase, correct?
Yes, yes.
The U in VUS stands for uncertain, correct?
So uncertain or unclear, yes.
Okay. And that means, based on my understanding of fundamental English, that we don't know the significance of that variant. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
How
Certainly both ways.
do scientists determine whether or not a variant ever becomes significant?
Well, in many cases, we look at the results of additional testing based on, for example, a skin biopsy. We look at the collagen protein, or it's based on computer analysis of the protein, of the effect of the mutation on the protein, and we can predict that way whether or not we expect an effect on the function of the protein.
Would I be correct in presuming that essentially what it takes is further time, further research, further analysis of the variant? Is that correct?
It's possible, yes, that would give more information, yes, correct.
And in your experience and in your history, have you been familiar with variants that at one point in time were labeled as VUSs that became later characterized as either pathogenic or benign?
Yes, I do that very often because I'm the curator of the international databases in this field. So it's my decision to say whether they are not likely to be pathogenic or not.
And how long can that process take?
Or it can take sometimes years until new information is available. It's not always possible to just look at the in silico or the computer analysis of the protein.
So it's not a question that can be answered during this trial. Is that correct?
Yes, it's we cannot answer this question now. Maybe we can do it next week, or maybe we can do it next year or next decade. We don't know.
But these folks are being prosecuted this week, right?
Yes. So we don't, and then
Go ahead.
if I get new information in the next few days, I can comment on that, of course. Yes. But otherwise, we don't know.
The defects in collagen and collagen production can impact the formation of blood vessels and capillaries in the skin. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Can that cause markings or result in markings in a child or an individual that resemble bruising but are in fact not bruises?
That's correct, yes. That's what we see in our eye patients.
And what would those markings look like in your experience?
Sometimes they look like regular bruises, and they behave like that also by staying present for days, 2 weeks, and they go from blue to green to yellow and then disappear. And sometimes, like we see in Jameson, these dark blue spots, there is a name for them that I don't know, but they are actually different from bruises in that they disappear very quickly. And they are more border on them. So a bruise is usually very, does not have a defined borderline. It's just dark blue in the middle, light blue to the sides, and then it disappears. And these markings that I saw photographs of in Jameson have a very sharp outline. They do not look at all like bruises. They do not behave like bruises because on the same arm, a photo that was date stamped by the hospital 1 day later, the blue spot has disappeared. I have no explanation for that, but it's not a bruise.
I want to make sure that I heard and understood your statement about the VUS at COL 1A2 and the SP7 VUS. I want to make sure that I understand part of your testimony correctly, okay?
Yes.
As I interpreted what you were saying, it was that sometimes when you have variants, a variant that may not be of significance and another variant that in and of itself may not be of significance, there can be interplay between those two that may be significant. Did I understand that correctly?
But that is not regarding the VUS, but it's more with what we call recessive pathogenic variants, that one pathogenic variant in the gene is supposed to be recessive so that there's no disease. But what we see nowadays, when we have more families with these diseases, with these gene mutations, we see that the carriers often have a mild form of the disease. Or when there are pathogenic variants in 2 or 3 or more of these recessive genes, in different genes, that can have an additive effect, because each of those have an effect on collagen. Only 50% loss of one of those enzyme or chaperone molecules will not really have a clinical effect. But if you have more than one of those genes that is mutated, or has a pathogenic variant, I want to say, that can have an effect. We call it a polygenic or multigenic effect, to distinguish it from recessive.
If I could, I want to ask you a couple of questions about the spectrum of disease or findings that you see in patients that have OI, or osteogenesis imperfecta. When I got involved in this case years ago now, my impression or understanding about OI was that it was a disease that would be readily apparent to somebody who saw a child, and the child would have numerous fractures throughout their childhood. And it was a very, very bad syndrome with bad effects. Can you talk a little bit, or tell me a little bit more about the mild side of that spectrum and what you typically see?
Yes, it's a very broad spectrum, and many mild cases don't get diagnosed until later age because they have less fractures. And so these children have been lucky maybe, and they have a less severe effect. I already mentioned that in all the genes together there are several thousands of different variants that cause the disease. So that's actually not one simple effect on the disease. There are more than 3,000 or 4,000 different effects on the disease, and that's giving a very broad spectrum of severity. And most people, well, if people know a patient with OI, osteogenesis imperfecta, at all, it's usually an intermediate case that has many fractures. Some cases have very few fractures within the same family. We can see children have had no fractures at all, but did inherit the pathogenic dominant variant in the collagen genes from their parents, from one of their parents. And it depends probably on other genetic factors, or maybe also on external factors. Food, drugs, whatever. Vitamin D.
All right, Doctor, I think those are all the questions I have for you. The other attorneys may have some follow-up questions, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Ms. Bernard, do you have any additional questions for this witness?
Only one question for redirect, Dr. Pauls. You mentioned when speaking to Ms. Fox that the issue was the collagen, not the minerals. Is there a way you can explain the difference between collagen and minerals in a bone, how it affects bone
Let me give an
strength?
example. If you have, I don't know if you were old enough to remember the blackboards in school where we have these little white chalks, and what is 100% minerals, and you can easily break it. If you compare that with a chicken bone, it's very difficult to break it because it's a little bit flexible and very strong, and that's because the chicken bone has all these collagen fibers inside it. So that's the importance of the collagen in the bone. So the minerals are brittle. Together with the collagen, they form a stable and elastic structure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pauls.
Anything else, Ms. Bernard?
No further questions from me, Your Honor.
Ms. Fox, any additional questions?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Hood, any additional questions? Would this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you for your time, Dr. Pauls.
Ms. Fox?
No
You're
objection.
welcome.
Mr. Hood? Dr. Pauls, thank you for joining us by Zoom, and we can all sign off now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I will leave the meeting now.